We're starting this morning, speaking of money, with a lot of it being spent by our utilities on political races here in the state of Michigan. On the surface, you think that's rather odd because the big utilities like DTE and Consumers, they've got a monopoly in our state, and they've got the State Public Service Commission overseeing them, but rarely challenging their rate hikes, and so they're pretty much assured a profit. There is oversight in the legislature. There's an Energy Policy Committee. It's chaired in the House by Gary Glenn, and one of the members of that committee is Tom Barrett of Charlotte. And they have been questioning some of the moves that the utilities are making along the way and that the Public Service Commission has been making. And now both of them, Gary Glenn, the chairman, and Tom Barrett, the member, are running for the state Senate. Well, guess what? Their opposition is being led by high expenditures from the utilities, especially Consumers Power. And Representative Tom Barrett's on the other end of our line. I don't think I misstated any of that, did I?
No, Frank, you've got it exactly correctly, and I appreciate you having me on this morning to inform your listeners about this.
So how is this money spent? They don't come right out and spend it on ads directly and say this is paid for by Consumers Energy. They do it a little differently, don't they?
Right, they do. They take their, as you alluded to, their government mandated profit that they're allowed, and then they've built that over time, and they've spent just last year alone $17 million that they sent to this group called Citizens Energizing Michigan's Economy, which is a kind of thinly veiled political structure by Consumers Energy to run ads in political campaigns. Specifically in my district, they're running ads in favor of my opponent, calling him a conservative and advancing his agenda and things like that. The irony there is that my opponent was ranked the third most liberal Republican in the House of Representatives last year. So it's just, their branding that they want to do in a Republican primary, trying to achieve a political outcome that they want, because I've been willing to ask tough questions of them that they don't really like.
What are some of those tough questions?
Well, just as one example, a whole bunch of new meters were installed throughout the state of Michigan. And a number of constituents of mine complained that their bills had gone up unexpectedly, and they were asking questions about that. We had a committee hearing about it. I asked some questions of Consumers Energy, one of which was, hey, of all the 2 million meters that you just released, brand new meters that went out on people's homes, how many of them came back as defective, meaning that the energy measurement wasn't correctly done and needed to be redone? They said basically none. And I said, well, of 2 million units, certainly some percentage of them had to have been faulty or misreading or something like that. They basically refused to take any acknowledgement for that. It's just crazy. On top of that, my own father in the DTE energy marketplace had a 10,000% increase measurement on his natural gas usage. That's insane. He would have had to heat his house to about 450 degrees for a year straight to have that kind of consumption. So, when we ask tough questions of them and stick up for the people in our district that aren't in the legislature, they fight back by coming into our districts and running ads against us.
Well, and the same has happened. Gary Glenn's facing a really nasty campaign, and this is paid for by the utilities, specifically Consumers, a group called Faithful Conservatives of Michigan, whoever they are, and they're questioning his conservatism and running ads against him for the Senate race.
Yes, and Gary and I have both been willing to kind of question the energy structure in the state of Michigan and ask questions like, why can't people go out and procure their energy from an alternative source if they want to? I have a bill that I'm pushing through the legislature right now that would allow people to more easily undertake what we call net metering, which is you put a solar panel on your roof, you buy it yourself, you want to harvest the energy from that. The utilities really don't like that model, and they've been stepping in the way of people having that ability, and they really want to penalize folks who make that investment on their own to make them less dependent upon the energy grid, and that's resulted in these types of ads running against us.
We'll have more on this political hardball with State Representative Tom Barrett coming up on the Frank Beckmann Show. State Representative Tom Barrett of Charlotte with us this morning here on the Frank Beckmann Show, kicking things off. And he's running for the state Senate, and he is getting opposition. He sits on the Energy Policy Committee in the House and has questioned the need for some of the rate hikes and the meters. And he's basically doing what a legislator does on that committee, asking questions about why we need to raise electricity rates on people. And no doubt curious as well about this move that consumers and DTE have made to suddenly embrace the idea of green energy, if you will, more windmills, more solar panels. And you think that's more expensive, but for some reason they're embracing that and moving toward it.
Yeah, and we've been willing to, like you said, Frank, we've been willing to ask questions of them, and I've been very respectful of consumers' energy. You know, I'm a legislator. I don't provoke them unnecessarily and try and just throw bombs at them or something like that. I've been a very respectful, legislator with them. I have never turned down a single meeting with Consumers Energy. I've met with their CEO. They invited me to a dinner that they hosted that I attended out of respect for their presence in our state and the investment that they have. And they say, and as people have asked them why they're doing this, that they want legislators who are willing to engage in dialogue with them. Well, I've never turned down a single opportunity for dialogue with Consumers Energy, and it proves that they aren't interested in dialogue. They're interested in control and those that they know will vote in their favor. And if you're not willing to do that 100% of the time, then they're going to come after you, and they want to make an example out of you. And that's what they're trying to do to me and to Representative Glenn in his district as well.
They're playing good old-fashioned country hardball.
They are. And I think they want to send a message to other legislators. Look what happens to these guys if you step out of line. Look what will happen to you if you go against our interests. We're going to come after you as hard as we came after Tom Barrett and as hard as we came after Gary Glenn. They want a scalp to hang on the wall to show what happens if they don't get their way. And that's why they're going as hard as they are. $17 million last year alone that they sent to this group that's running these ads in both my district and Representative Glenn's now.
Well, that's unheard of. 2 legislative districts and one utility spending $17 million against you? That's crazy.
The group that they've funded, they sent $17 million to. We don't know all of where that money has gone yet. We do know that they're spending heavily in both my district here in mid-Michigan, the 24th Senate district to replace Rick Jones, who's term limited from the state Senate. And we also know they're playing heavily in the race that Gary Glenn is running in to replace Senator Green. And we don't know where all of that money has gone yet, but we know they've spent hundreds of thousands of dollars on ads already alone.
Well, we do know this, that a lot of money has also come in from out of state from a fellow by the name of Tom Steyer, and he's one of those hedge fund kings out in California who has gotten very involved politically in the green energy movement and also in the anti-Donald Trump movement. He is running ads across the country asking that the president be impeached. So he's leading an impeach Trump movement. He's throwing money into different states, including Michigan, isn't he?
Yes, and he threatened a ballot initiative here in Michigan, and so the utilities went to him and said, "Well, we'll compromise with you. We won't compromise with Gary Glenn and Tom Barrett, but we'll compromise with this billionaire that has all of this political clout and everything else to advance Michigan's so-called green energy and everything else. They won't let homeowners put a solar panel on their roof and get a fair energy rate of return on that." But they will negotiate with a billionaire who has, decisively anti-Republican interests at heart.
That's unbelievable, and I also have it on good authority, by the way, that a major political figure here in Metro Detroit was threatened by a representative of one of the utilities with this same sort of retribution and campaign action against him if he doesn't come on board with the regional transit ideas that are being promoted here, and that's Mark Hackle out of Macomb County. I'm told that one of the utilities directly threatened him politically if he didn't come on board.
Yeah, and that's, I do not want to see Michigan fall victim to being held hostage by any interests, utilities or otherwise. And I think this election is an opportunity to show what our priorities are as a state. And do we want to allow people who are beholden to the utilities to make the interests of our state for the next 4 to 8 years as state senators, or do we want people are willing to work with the utilities in a reasonable fashion, ask the tough questions that need to be asked, hold them accountable, and work where our interests align, and then work, in opposition when they don't align. I think that's only fair as a legislator to have that ability, to have those frank discussions, have those frank opportunities to collaborate with the utilities when it moves Michigan in the right direction, but also to step forward and say, hey, we don't think this is the right thing to do when you're moving in the direction that isn't appropriate for our state, and to really stick up for the ratepayers that are continually paying higher and higher energy costs. We have some of the highest energy rates in the Midwest, and it's not getting any better, Frank.
No, in fact, it's going to go even higher, and the utilities even admit this, that through this movement toward, what are they agreeing to now, a 50% green goal, and they're telling us, well, we want to go slowly because we don't want sticker shock. Well, long term, it's going to be sticker shock.
They're trying to boil the frog gradually, I guess.
I guess so, but at any rate, they're getting very involved in these campaigns, and people ought to know about it, and ought to know where the money's coming from and why the ads are being run, and it's like I said, good old-fashioned country hardball. I'd give you credit for, following what you believe is right for the people of Michigan, and also standing up to these kind of threats.
Thank you, Frank. I've been in the Army for 18 years. I didn't join the Army, and then I didn't run for office in the legislature to be a pushover. I joined the Army and now serving in the legislature to stick up for people who don't have the ability to stick up for themselves. And that's what I want to continue to do in the state Senate. I'm willing to work with the utilities when they're going in the right direction, but I'm also willing to stick up for ratepayers when they're not. And I think that's only fair.
Tom Barrett, thanks so much for the time this morning. Good luck, and we'll talk again.
Thank you, Frank. I really appreciate it.
So do we. Tom Barrett, the state representative from Charlotte, member of the Energy Committee, on the hardball being played by the energy utilities in our state in the political campaigns.